everyone, welcome back to the Book Brood with Erin and Heidi. And today we're going to be doing another Top 5 Wednesday, which I think makes 2 weeks in a row.
2 weeks in a row.
What?
Wait, no, I think we might have missed last week.
Oh, okay, good.
Okay, so.
Not 2 weeks in a row. So I didn't want to get too, dependable.
Right.
So this week is Top 5 Fantasy and Sci-Fi.
Yes, so this is a companion to the BookTube SSF Awards, which is also hosted by Sam at Thoughts on Tomes, I believe.
So we will link her stuff down below, along with a bunch of Goodreads read-alongs that are happening with the SFF Awards. I think there's a bunch of readathons over the next few months, which is really exciting, but we'll link all that information down below.
Yeah. I feel like I'm cheating being part of that group because I'm still trying to build my foundation of sci-fi literature knowledge, and I'm not planning on actually reading anything new sci-fi related this year.
That's fine.
That's it.
I feel I don't feel like I'm cheating, but you've read so much more sci-fi than I have. I barely dip my toes into sci-fi. But I don't know. I am planning on participating with a lot of the readathons. So.
And you've probably read more fantasy than me, so.
Probably, yes.
Did you want to start?
Absolutely. I didn't put a lot of thought into this. I just kind of grabbed all the sci-fi off my shelves.
Yeah.
Which just happened to be 4, so here we go. The first one is Ender's Shadow. Or no, wait, I don't have Ender's Game. You have Ender's Game.
I have it right here. It was part of mine.
Boom! Okay. Ender's Game, Ender's Shadow. These are the only two in his series that I've read so far by Orson Scott Card, but I do intend to read both of these trilogies simultaneously, so these are both the first in each respective trilogy, if that makes any sense, because they're parallel trilogies.
Right, and this one's actually a 5-parter now.
Is it a 5-parter now?
Yes, so
I was
had
trying
4
to figure
parts, and then he wrote Ender in Exile, which takes place between Ender's Game and Speakers for the Dead.
Right, so depending on where you look it up, it will either be part 6, part 5.
Part 5.
I looked it up and it said part 6.
Oh, really?
So I don't know what that's all about. But basically, these are the same story told from different characters' point of view. So that's how I intend to go through the series, is reading them like that. Anyways, that's a huge explanation. This is a story about children who are recruited into the space military to fight and defend humanity. And that's all I know of the first two. And I really enjoy these. They feel very much middle grade sci-fi, which is fine because it's not too difficult to get into. There's a lot of character depth and just emotions. And I get so emotional about these characters, even though they're completely fictional. I will say that I did enjoy Ender's Game more than Ender's Shadow, even though it was interesting to see events that were happening that the main character, the Ender, did not realize were happening. To see it from someone else's point of view. But I really enjoyed both of these, and I plan on continuing in this huge series. So.
Yeah, and then real quickly, this was part of mine, Ender's Game. It's just very popular, very well-known in the sci-fi community overall, and it's very easy to read.
Okay, the next one I have is John Scalzi's. This is the Ghost Brigades, which is book 2 in his Old Man's War series. I did like Old Man's War, but I actually like the Ghost Brigades more because it's about the special forces instead of the regular infantry, and I liked that aspect of this. But this is a really long series about basically the same thing. It's military sci-fi, humanity trying to defend themselves against aliens, and dealing with a lot of... This series gets more political as you go on, but I definitely liked the Ghost Brigades and the Special Forces.
This one I feel like I've talked about a lot lately. It is Waystation by Clifford D. Simak. This is a story about a man who comes to run a travel way station that is on Earth that's part of this whole intergalactic network of travel locations. He was a soldier in the Union Army during the Civil War, and it's into like the 1970s when this is taking place. And he has, through the technology of this way station, been able to live as long as he has. And it's just a story about his identity, or just him being noticed, even though he's in the small community of people that stick to themselves. He eventually becomes noticed. The government starts to get involved in just investigating him, looking into what he's up to. And it's a very human story just about him and the relationships he has with these travelers that come through his home. And it has a bit of action and excitement at the end that I think is it's just such a perfect balance of a book, and it's very short, very enjoyable to read.
Nice. So apparently I like military sci-fi, because here's another one. This is Terms of Enlistment by Marco Cluse. This is the beginning of I want to say 5-part series so far. I don't know if he's writing more. I know there's a graphic novel series that I think is a spin-off, but might be a direct correlation. I'm not sure. And this is a story about a teenager who is growing up in a very, very poor area of Earth, and basically you have two choices. You turn to crime or you turn to the military. And he goes into the military and ends up having to sort of suppress agitation from the same community as he's from, and he sees a whole different side of basically what the government is doing. I really enjoyed the first half of this, in that part of him being in the army and fighting on Earth, but then something happens and he gets shipped off to the Navy, and he's in space and traveling between planets. And I wasn't a huge fan of that transition, which is why I haven't continued in the series yet. I intend to, but I was really enjoying what was happening on Earth. And then all of a sudden aliens come into it, and I'm just like, but what about Earth? Okay? Humans. But anyways, I really enjoyed this when I was reading it, and it had one of the best war scenes, like in the middle of a city when you have very angry populace fighting the military. And it was a very real, very kind of gruesome graphic scene, and I really, really enjoyed that. So anyways, this is good.
Right, and then the next one I'm going to talk about is The Star's My Destination by Alfred Bester. I read this more than 10 years ago now. A long time ago, but this is a really great story. It is about a man named Gulliver Foyle. He is a criminal at the beginning of this, and through most of this book, but he is being rehabilitated back into society, and he's being taught what almost everyone in human society knows how to do, and that is to teleport. And it just takes this mental practice or whatever, but that is what the whole economy of humanity is based on now, is just being able to go anywhere within 3,000 miles just in the blink of an eye. And it is an adventure he has with politics and the different sects of humanity that are out in the galaxy, and just a really, really fun, great story that just spans a lot of different subjects.
Okay, my next is The Book of Phoenix by Nnedi Okorafor, and this is somewhere between sci-fi and fantasy. This was an amazing story, and I don't really know how to talk about it. It's about a woman who realizes that the people she's grown up with are actually her captors, and she realizes that she's being mistreated, and she gets very angry, and it's a story about a woman trying to come into her own and realize her cultural differences and her societal differences, and it's just a very angry book about vengeance and deciding when it's appropriate and how much vengeance is appropriate in that sort of situation. And I loved this, and I recommend it to everyone.
The next one I'm going to talk about is my favorite of Robert A. Heinlein's actually adult books, and this is The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. I really enjoyed this story. It is about a moon society that is being run by a corporate monopoly on Earth, and the moon society's job is to essentially grow grain and then ship it back to Earth, and Earth is dependent on that grain. And this is a story of revolution where the moon is essentially seizing the power that they have to become an independent, a sovereign nation amongst the world, essentially. And the characters are a lot of fun. There's just a lot of great kind of purist libertarianism ideals and things in here, and Heinlein actually sets up a world where it can actually come to be, and so that's kind of a fun fairy tale, if you will.
Nice. And no list would be complete without The Prince of Thorns by Mark Lawrence. What do you call this? Sci-fantasy? Is that what you call it? Yeah, this is a sci-fantasy world. It's mostly fantasy with like a little bit of sci-fi thrown into it. But it's amazing if you like anti-heroes and very violent, mostly villainous main characters.
Nice. And then the last one I'm going to talk about is Roadside Picnic, and this is by Boris and Arkady Strugatsky. This is a Russian classic. It is about a world where aliens did not invade, they did not visit. They just left a bunch of their stuff on what's called these zones around planet Earth, and it is about the result of those zones and the things that are left there and the consequences it has on the communities that these zones are by the people that make a career out of going into these zones to retrieve objects for scientific study or for just personal collectors, rich collectors, and then the consequences that those people have for doing that. And one of the most difficult parts of reading about this book is learning about the main character and what happens with, or what becomes of, his daughter, just because of the fact of how his DNA has changed from making a life of going into these zones to scavenge, and that's just the career that he chose and the career that he ends up being tied to for the rest of his life.
Wow.
Very good read.
Awesome. So we will link all of the information for Top 5 Wednesday. Definitely check it out and get involved if you're not already involved. Go ahead and let us know what your top favorite sci-fi fantasy books are. And
we'll see you next time, everyone.
Bye.